The knowledge, the strength, the capacity to take the leap is truly based on peer group and who you're intentionally surrounding yourself with coaches, mentors, friends, and just people that want to play the game of life and business and wealth creation at a higher level.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. The Entrepreneurs Recovery Podcast is a podcast for entrepreneurs or anyone who's interested in healing from addictions, trauma, and attachments that hold them back from sharing their authentic voice with the world. So welcome. Today's episode is with a special guest named Justin Donald. Justin and I met actually at Hal Elrod's a Miracle Morning movie premiere. So if you go back to episode 30, you're going to hear about Hal Elrod, and it's a recent episode. By the way, Justin Donald's episode came out a while back, but we are going to release it on YouTube so everyone can hear this again. It was a great episode. I didn't want people to miss because it's on the topic of money. And I don't know about you, but money is a big trigger. It's a big word that growing up, we didn't really talk about. There was a lot of self-debting. There was a lot of self-debting right up into recent years and under-earning. And so if any of you can relate to this, or if you're just looking for incredible advice on investing or, what to think about in the future, Justin Donald has been called the Warren Buffett of lifestyle investing. So this is a guy to pay attention to listen to. There's things that we talk about like the Bitcoin. We talk about some of the best investments right now. We even talk about psychedelic companies to invest in. It was a really exciting conversation. I really hope you get a lot of value into this. So thank you for tuning in. And I just want to remind you too, we're going to be having a listener submission form. So if you have any things you want to say to me, any videos you want to send or messages or any requests or just what's going on in your life. Maybe you are struggling with addiction. Maybe you're just struggling with trying to understand what is your purpose? How do I reach my full potential? So we're going to put that in that form. You're going to see that in the video. You're going to see a place to click on that in the show notes. So look out for that. But in the meantime, enjoy the show, everyone. Hey, Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Jesse. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And it is a great honor. I mean, I was reaching out to your assistant and I'm like, this guy is a little harder to get on. And I understand why, because just looking at your schedule is so packed and the impact you're making in the world. And I'm just glad that we have made this time right now, because I think our audience is going to be in for a treat, because I think a lot of the people that listen, and especially in my circles, like there's like an upbringing of, and you might even relate to this, like we didn't talk about money growing up. Like money was like a trauma. It was like a pain point to talk about. So to be able to bring you on the show and talk about, the lifestyle investor and what that means specifically and how powerful that concept is. So I'm really excited to have you on. I think there's going to be a lot of great value coming to the audience today. So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, and hopefully you or anyone else don't get the impression I'm too busy. I just am very hardcore on boundaries when it comes to like family time, travel, and yes. I just don't compromise those things for much of anything. And so I've got the times that I want to work, and I spend time, doing podcasts, my own, or being a guest on someone like yours, and times where I'm like focused on our business. But a lot of my time, I just really want to dedicate it to the family. I want to dedicate it to travel and adventure, and really maximizing. For me, we've got 8 summers left with our daughter before she's on her own and is an adult, and so I just want to max those out.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly why I brought that up, is to point the boundaries, that we often don't have, I don't have, to really protect my time for what's most important. So I'm really excited to dive into that. And I'd love to start with just getting into your story a little bit. And I know you have an amazing story of where you are and where you've come from, but I'd like to maybe go back as far as you want and get to know Justin a little more intimately before we dive into this episode.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think if we're going to go back, we probably should go back to where I feel like I kind of gained some of my confidence in this space, because growing up, I was a quiet kid. I was very uncomfortable, public speaking, talking to like one person. and I remember I took this job. My parents in 7th grade said, "Hey, we're not your bank. You need to make money. So go get a job." Now, back then, you could just look at a classified paper and pick a job. And I picked a job that was selling newspaper subscriptions door to door. I have no idea why I picked this job, Jesse. This was like the worst job based on like paper, based on my skill set. And I was horrible at it. I mean, people told me no, at the beginning, 100% of the time. This was 100% commission job. And if I didn't sell, I didn't make any money. And I went weeks without a sale, like working many days a week. So, I was just brutally, horribly awful at this job and talking to people and selling myself, selling a newspaper. So I wasn't selling an actual newspaper. It was a subscription for a newspaper. And one day things just kind of clicked. And it was like, well, what if I knew what they were going to ask me ahead of time? Because you kind of do. You get enough of a sample size of all the reasons why they say no. It's like you have every reason out there that they're going to say no. And then I'm like, what if I just get really good at handling those? And what if I just come up with my own scripts and I can figure this thing out? And I eventually became pretty good at it. And that's how I paid for everything that I did in high school. It's how I funded my first semester of college, actually my first full year of college. Was selling newspaper subscriptions door to door. And I eventually moved up to the point that I was creating the scripts for everyone. I was doing the onboarding and training. And my senior year, I took around a crew of other kids to sell newspaper subscriptions and coupon books door to door. So I started, early on making, having the experience of hiring, training, and then putting people out where I would make a commission on every one of their sales, as well as any commissions on if I sold anything myself.
Well, I love starting there. I haven't heard that story. And I really love that story because it's like you had to earn it. You had to put the work in. It didn't get handed to you. And then you figured out a way to scale it and make it come in different various streams of income, which is obviously something today that you're an expert in. So I love that story.
Well, it's interesting because I've got a lot of friends that are like, why didn't you quit? I would have quit. And the answer is I have no clue. I just think I never quit anything at that point, and I never even contemplated quitting. But based on how horrible I was at the beginning, I probably should have quit. I'm glad I didn't. But I worked weeks and made no money. My parents thought I should quit. My friends thought it was funny. Yeah, so it's a fascinating thing. But I learned some life skills there. I learned how to talk to adults. I learned how to handle objections. I learned how to take rejection. I learned how to separate rejection of what I'm offering from me personally, right? So at the beginning, you take everything personal. It's like, oh, it's my fault. They don't like me. And then later it's like, no, actually, they just don't like the offer, or I'm not communicating the offer well enough for them to understand the value of it. It has nothing to do with me. And it might just be the way that they're showing up. And so it was this interesting mental shift of like, I take everything personally to nothing is really personal to, wow, if I just become effective enough of a communicator and handling objections, I could really sell to virtually anyone. And that shift in confidence was profound, especially for future jobs and, being an entrepreneur and being an investor.
Yeah. And I think like when you say like, hey, I had a hard time speaking with people, I was awkward, I was shy. I was like that in a lot of ways too. And what a way to throw yourself in the fire, directly in the fire, and be like, I'm going to learn this and I'm not going to give up. And what do you think that is though, that caused you not to give up? And, what do you think it is that causes people to quit? That's not an easy job. So what do you think?
Well, I think most people, they quit over discomfort. So it gets too uncomfortable. I got to quit. I can't push through this. I really think that's it for most people. I probably didn't quit due to ignorance. I've never had a job before, so I'd never thought about quitting. I played sports. I'd never quit any sports. I went to school. I never quit school. I just think I never really thought about quitting. I just thought like, I'm not good at this. I should probably figure out how to get good at this. So I don't know if it was just an ignorance is bliss type of thing. Or if it's that I had this desire to, like, I couldn't quit because I had to figure it out. Like I couldn't not find a way to put all my effort in to succeed. But in like recollection, like when I dig in my memory, I just don't ever remember actually thinking about quitting.
Mm. Yeah. And you got me thinking like how that translates into some of the things you're doing today. Like I've heard you talk about, you didn't borrow money to get where you are. You saved money, you invested money, and you built it from there. And a lot of people I hear who have become successful, some of our mutual friends, they borrowed, took on debt and made things happen, but you didn't do that. And I wonder how this translates into that as well, kind of building it from scratch in your investments and doing it yourself.
It's interesting. I have a lot of friends that have raised money, and I think that can be an amazing way to invest. I think if you can figure out a way where, you're good at what you do, you're not going to lose your investors' money, because at the beginning, these investors are your friends, right? People really well, friends and family. I think it is brilliant to use other people's money when it makes sense and when you have the skill set, and if you're willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that they get their money back. Early on, I just was nervous that I wasn't like an expert, and I didn't want to take on other people's money if I didn't know how good I was going to be at it. So I figured like I need to test this out myself. And if I can make it work, maybe in the future I'd raise money, but for the time being, I'm just going to use my own money. And by the way, that means that I had to go slower. If I borrowed money from other people, I could have built it bigger. But going slow at the beginning was really good for me, because it forced me to dive in with each asset. It forced me to really understand what I was doing. It forced me to find mentors that knew this arena of, for me, it was real estate, it was mobile home parks. And it was really just, it was great. And it was also nice knowing like I'm doing all this on my own. Like I'm resourceful enough to find the money if I need it, but I actually was disciplined enough to save it so I had it. And I'll go at a slower pace to also mitigate some of the risk. Mm.
Yeah, I love that. I kind of want to get into the, you talk about, doing things step by step to meet your survival income, right? Your base income, you call it survival income. And I think this day and age, there's a lot of people struggling just to meet their survival income, even entrepreneurs, and I'm wondering, like, what advice would you give for someone who is, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, and they're literally just meeting their survival income, but they may have a family or a significant other or something, and they need to really start to increase that. And a lot of people might think, well, I got to get a job, or I got to take on other, stressors to bring on, to bring in more revenue. But what would you recommend to someone who's just meeting their survival income and really trying to get to the next step?
It's tricky. Entrepreneurship is challenging. And even if you are a good or strong entrepreneur, that doesn't mean that the season of the economy doesn't play a major factor as well. So it's like a lot of things really have to line up. And that's why 96% of businesses fail, right? So, I think you're at a major disadvantage. And the goal is to figure out a way to make everything work. So whether you're a business professional, you're an entrepreneur, I think that innately we're willing to take a little more risk before we have a family, before we have dependents. I feel like I was riskier with my time. I put in more time. I was riskier with, some of the ways that I spent time or money early before I was married. I think that changed a bit. That whole idea of getting to survival income really came from wanting to help my wife feel comfortable in transitioning what I was doing and what she was doing. So I knew that for her, that would feel safe. So part of it was to appeal to her. Because I also know if I just stop something cold turkey, like I'm pretty confident in time I'll figure it out. It doesn't mean it'll be a smooth transition. I just think in time, like I might have to go through some ups and some downs, but in time I'll figure it out. But that's a little bit rockier if you're married, or if you have kids. So I think there are different seasons in life. And if you have the luxury of still being young, not having dependents or many dependents, or maybe your dependents are super young, that's one thing. But I think it's another thing when you have other people that you are providing for, that you need to support. You need to support their emotional health along the way. So just really understanding like the makeup of your spouse, your partner, understanding like what they need and how they need you to show up, I think dictates a lot of like how I made decisions.
Mm. Yeah. And I know, I'm sort of maybe jumping ahead, but it's to jump ahead to come back is I know that you wanted to have your wife be a stay-at-home mom and take care of your kids. So you made a big risk by putting up your life savings and investing in your first, trailer park lot. So, I mean, walk us through that. I mean, that's a pretty bold move to put that on the table. What gave you that confidence? Were you working with a coach? I mean, what made you put that type of risk out there? And then obviously it paid off, but what made you to make that first investment?
Well, I'll tell you what, my wife thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was crazy. The people I worked with thought I was crazy. My mentors thought I was crazy. So part of me was like, am I crazy or am I just a total contrarian? And for most of my life, I've kind of gone the opposite way of the crowd. So it's almost like the more I hear you shouldn't do it, it makes me want to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But I also had mentors that had done it. And for me, it's just a blueprint that like, give me a blueprint and I'm going to do all right. If you've got a successful thing that you have proven and you've got the playbook and you give me the playbook, I'm pretty confident I'm going to do okay. Maybe better than okay, but at least okay. And so I had friends that were doing mobile home park investing. I went to this seminar to learn how to do it. And this guy, Frank Rolfe, took me under his wing. He's the largest private owner of mobile home parks. And I pestered him. I reached out to him all the time. We ended up becoming good friends and we talk often today. But I mean, at first he had no clue who I was. It was lucky that we shared a flight home from the event. So I actually got to take him to dinner and get to know him. But my goal was just to build a relationship with him and use his playbook. And then I had a dear friend named Tim Nikolai, who you may or may not know. He's friends with our mutual friend, Hal Elrod. But he was also doing it and had learned from Frank and said, hey, you should check this out. At first, I was lending him money to buy mobile home parks. And then I was like, man, he's making a lot of money. Maybe I should just, cut to the chase and go right for buying them myself. So that was pretty eye-opening, seeing some of the profit numbers there and having two people I was close to, one being the foremost expert in the mobile home park space, willing to take time with me. And I just believe if other people can do it, so can I.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, we kind of brought up not following the herd and not going with where everyone's saying and kind of following your gut or your maybe even rational thinking of maybe it's just innate. I don't know what that is that causes some of us to go, oh, okay, this is the way they're telling me to do it, but I don't feel like I want to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. And it's a risk, but it's paid off clearly for you and for me in many ways. So I'm wondering, where do people go to get the truth of investing and learning how to be financially free? Because I know your book is a great guide, but as we know, most people are not going to read your book. So, they may not take that first step. So, where can people go to get some of the knowledge so that they can actually, is it on CNN and CNN, is that where we're going to get it? Or where is it going to come from to be able to get some of this knowledge that you have?
Well, it's definitely not coming from mainstream media. It's definitely not coming from any of the talking heads. In fact, there's the inverse Jim Cramer ETF that follows the opposite of everything he recommends that actually performs really well. So it tells you that his recommendations are horrible. Any of these talking heads, they don't know anything. They absolutely, and no one can time the market. No one knows what's going to happen in the market unless you have some insider trading. It's highly emotional, highly irrational. And that's the reason I don't like it. So for me, I like to go to experts in whatever the thing is that I want to do. So we got to be careful because today everyone's a life coach. Everyone is, equipped apparently to help everyone else out of whatever their traumas are. And that's just not realistic. I mean, to really help people out of trauma, there's some psychological training that one needs, and in some cases, medical training to help people with mindset. Like there's wonderful education around that. But for me to be like confident in pursuing real estate as my first investment, I need someone that is an expert in that thing that I'm doing. And then I'd also really feel comfortable with a peer group of people that are kind of in the same place as me or have gone through what I've gone through. So to me, the way to access, the knowledge, the strength, the capacity to take the leap is truly based on peer group and like who you're intentionally surrounding yourself with coaches, mentors, friends, and just people that want to play the game of life and business and wealth creation at a higher level, right? So like whatever it is I want to get great at, maybe I want to get in shape. Then and there's a point in my life where I was not in shape. And I knew I needed to surround myself with people that were in shape and surround myself with at least a trainer, if not a few people that, were trainers. And that like it rubbed off, and same thing for business and same thing for real estate, same thing for investing. And success leaves clues. The way people think about things, the mindset people have, it rubs off. I remember in times thinking like, how is that possible? Can I ever do it? Versus when you start hanging out with people that are doing it, it's like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be as good as them, but if I have the playbook, I can be, 60% as good as them. And 60% as good as them is better than what I'm doing right now because it helps me level up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, when I was working at Verizon and I was there for like almost 14 years, when I started to get serious about like, hey, I'm pretty good at sales and I started to want to be the best. I wanted to win the president's cabinet, the highest award in the company. I did exactly that thing. I went and looked at who was number one and then I called him on the phone because I could call him on the phone. He was working in another store. So I just called him and I started talking to him and I started realizing like, oh, this guy's not that different from me. He's just doing a couple techniques that I don't have, that I don't practice. So let me start doing these techniques. And that was free. I didn't pay anything. I just called him. And then eventually I did hire a coach that was someone who could help me to become more organized and accountable to these goals. And then eventually I did win the highest award in the company, which ultimately led to entrepreneurship and meeting our mutual friends and being at Hal's conference and meeting you. And we have a mutual friend, John Vroman, and, he created a community, Front Row Dads. And when I think about him creating a community, he sort of created it for himself. It's like it's a community to keep himself accountable in many ways and help these men who we all know, like it's easy to fall off track nowadays. And just with where the world is and just everything, addiction and just the stuff that's happening. So when like your community, the lifestyle investor community, like did you create that community based on providing something to the world that you didn't have, or what was the motivation?
Well, it's interesting because for me, it was that I was trying to find a group of people that were like me, that I resonated with, that played the game of life at an equal or higher level, that aspired for more. So in my mind, in any group you're in, you should be a mentor to some and you should be mentored by some. And I really search for that in a lot of different organizations. I mean, I've joined tons of masterminds, tons of groups. I mean, like double digits of different like communities that I was part of. And while there were pros to all of them, there are also cons to all of them. And I also just didn't find the right niche of people. So I decided, well, if I can't find them, maybe I'll build it myself and I'll see if I can attract them. So, in many ways, it was to satisfy a need or a desire to be in community with other like-minded people that I could learn from and that I could teach on both sides. I mean, our community is incredible. The Lifestyle Investor Mastermind has grown to something I never thought it would, with 150 members. And these are all very successful entrepreneurs and business people. We've got some in corporate America, some in, starting their own business, some very successful along the way in their business, and some that have sold their business. And so you have all these unique perspectives and, ways to build wealth, ways to scale businesses, ways to exit businesses, do this, don't do this. I mean, it's just really mentally and intellectually stimulating. So yeah, the group, like a lot of people are so excited to get in and join our community, but I've got to say, I may even be more excited than anyone joining because I just love it. It's my favorite place to spend time outside of my family.
Yeah, I love that. And, I just love, leaders who create the communities that they wanted to have for themselves and be able to provide those resources. So I think that's amazing. 150 people. That's incredible. I'm wondering too, part of this show, Entrepreneurs Recovery, is I like to kind of go to places a little more vulnerable, and some people don't even relate to this at all. But when you think about ways that you might have run into habits that didn't serve you, or even ways that you numb out, or even numb out today, maybe it could be for some it's food, for some it's technology, for some it's sex and porn, whatever it is. And I'm just curious, what are some of the ways that you would say that you still numb out or you've numbed out in the past, if this is something that you can share with us, if you're comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to be an open book always. I don't know that my life has been as traumatic as many of your guests, or even what you've experienced, because I haven't, though there are times in my life where I probably have used alcohol. In my mind, it's almost like I want to have fun, but maybe there's like an underlying, like, hey, I don't want to think about this. I want to numb this. And so, yeah, I mean, in my younger years, we would definitely drink a lot, way too much, on the weekends. And it was a very consistent thing. It was every weekend. And sometimes the weekends grew. It wasn't just a Friday, Saturday. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It was a Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, in college, it was like every night there was something. There was Time Warp Tuesday and Karaoke Wednesday. And, there was something every day of the week. And so I remember, I mean, at a certain point in college, and this, I don't know if this is more for fun or more to hide or what it was, but I mean, we would go out 6 nights a week very frequently. And I think as I grew up and as I became more serious about work and business, I think that it shifted. So I would still, party a bit on the weekends, but I was pretty strict during the week. But I think work also served as one of my vices because I worked a lot of hours. And in the early years of running my business, I was working 18-hour days, 18 and a half, sometimes 19-hour days for very long stretches of time during the busy season. And I think that, part of it is I want to do the best I can. Part of it is I don't like to lose. I like to be the best at the things that I do. Part of it is that, this was the most important thing to me. Like, this was my identity. My identity revolved around how people saw me. And if people saw me as a successful entrepreneur, or if they saw me as like a top performer in the standings, then it makes me more valuable in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, I mean, I actually think I definitely used alcohol as a vehicle for fun and probably some coping. But I probably used work as my greater vice.
Yeah, I had a guest on recently, Kashif Khan, the founder of the DNA company, and he talked about achievement addiction. One of his biggest addictions was achievement addiction, and that's how he could feel worthy, and that's how he could feel whole. And it's just interesting as I interview more entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs in the space. For some it was bullying. They were bullied as a child, and kind of a way to get back was be successful and work and get that report card that their mom was disappointed with them when they were 10 years old. Now they've proven that they're worthy. And so it's just interesting to think about a different lens of addiction too, that it's not just alcohol and drugs, sometimes it's achievement addiction, it's emotional addictions, and I'm wondering, in your experiences with all the people that you've come across, like how common is it that maybe someone has a block where it is something of, you can see like clearly, hey, this person needs some help. Maybe it's addiction or something, even though they're operating at a high level, but you can clearly see like this person needs help. Is that something you see a lot as in the space you're in? You've been an entrepreneur your whole life. So is that something you see a lot?
All the time. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, whether people care to admit it or not, I think the vast, vast majority struggle with something. Yeah. And often a lot of the issues are exacerbated by some of these vices, right? But people don't necessarily recognize that when they're in, when they're in deep, and you don't have the perspective you have from an impartial third party that is an observer. So yeah, I mean, I think I would say the vast majority.
Yeah, because they can get away with it too. If they have the money, the resources, they can fall back, and it could get pretty damaging. And I think that, maybe they can stand a little bit longer because they have the resources. And that's what I've seen with, some entrepreneurs who have, hit that place, and they're not going to go the traditional route for help, and they might come in and talk to someone, even listen to the show or come on and talk, but they're not going to go to AA, or they're not going to do any of that stuff, but they're going to try to find some help in people who have, like you said, find mentors who have done it. And, so I want to kind of turn over to some of your expertise too, which is like, I'd like to know, I know there's people listening who clearly are in massive debt and never going to feel they're going to be able to climb out of it. So like the idea of being rich, and I know there's different ways to look at it, but you even talk about this in your book. So what are some of like the top myths of being rich? Like what are some of these blocks that people have by these myths that people have?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people think money's going to solve their problems, but, it can solve many problems. It's not going to solve all the problems. And I think a lot of people suffer from emotional problems or just, different mental states that aren't going to allow them to even enjoy money if they did come into it. So, and I think a lot of the mindsets that people have limit them from making money. So they might outwardly say, I'd love to be rich, I'd love to be a millionaire, but inwardly, their mindset is handicapping them from even being able to, move forward. Because it's just a series of habits, right? It's just a collection of choices that would align with those circumstances, right? So, I mean, there was a point in my life where I was in debt, and it was really easy to go further into debt. And I remember having to make the decision, nope, can't borrow any more money, need to start paying this back, need to just, I don't have big chunks. Whenever I get them, I'll use them to that, but I may never get big chunks. So I just need to, every week, put money towards this. And I eventually dug myself out of that hole. And right when I dug myself out of it, I had an investment property. So this was before I owned anything. I had a hole. And then I owned a property that just went poorly, and I was upside down. I bought at the peak. Everything crashed in the financial crisis of '08. I was upside down. I had to come to the table. I had to sell by coming to the table with it was like $140,000 that I did not have. Like that was a horrible sale. My first real estate endeavor, I had to show up with cash to close when someone was buying my property from me.
Wow.
I mean, it is a mental, it's a crushing blow to the mental psyche, So many times I've been in a situation where I overspent, or this investment didn't work out. I invested in my business in this way and it did not produce any fruit. But I also know that with consistency, with routine, with the right processes in place, I can create the right habits over time. And that's what happened. I just nickel and dimed my way out of debt and eventually started making money, and just kept the same philosophy on saving money that I had even when I didn't have debt.
I want to come back to something, to be a little vulnerable myself. when you talked about there's like these psychological or mental blocks that people have from getting out of debt and even getting financially free. I think in my own world, that's been true, even up to this moment, to be completely honest, because in many ways I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. And it's not just as simple as like a social anxiety. There's like something deeper. And I've been able to dive really deep into this, looking at my genome and all these different things that are really fascinating. But regardless, it's still there. And I wonder how much that's cost me by having that block and all the habits that I do get into in all these areas. It's almost like in some ways I'm avoiding the one thing that could really set me free. And some of that is related to financial means. And I think that's true for a lot of people. We're saying, well, it's this, I need enlightenment, I need all this. And maybe it's also, I need to get myself out of debt and I need to bring in more income so that I can feel free. I can have more sovereignty. I can provide for my family. I can really build a legacy for the people when I pass. So I just bring it up to say, like, I've read, your book and I've followed you and you have a great podcast. And, I'm wondering, where can someone start if they still have those blocks, in your opinion, to just be disciplined, to just do it one day at a time, regardless of their state? And it's not exactly fake it till you make it, but they have the anxiety, they have the doubts. How would you recommend someone would push through that?
Well, self-talk is a powerful thing. And if you can at least recognize if the self-talk is positive or negative, it can, some people are not aware or in tune with it. And I think when you can get in tune and recognize that it's not uplifting and it needs to be, really trying to shift that. It could be done through incantations. It can be done through, I have found the most success for me, since I love people, is to be around people that think and live and talk that positive self-talk and really show up in a way that is inspiring to me. So my way has always been to model those that I think are living a good life, or those that I think are doing great on the wealth building journey. And by the way, there's momentum that exists. It's not like you do it overnight, and you don't have to do it overnight, but every step you get closer, there's momentum that kind of reinforces the behavior. And I can tell you, the moment you get out of debt, it's a celebratory thing. It's an amazing feeling. If you treat it right, it can offer you the motivation for that next level. And I think anyone can. I think truly those in debt, I think there are mindsets and mechanics and habits and routines that basically support it. And I think if you can shift any of those, you can shift anyone out of it.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think, when you talk about the lifestyle investor, it's really choosing, and maybe you can explain to our audience, what do you mean by lifestyle investor? Because I think in many ways people think of having money and the rich are behind all of what's happening in the world, and they're bad people. People who have money are bad. And I think that, it's obviously not the case. There's incredible people like yourself, many people who are extremely wealthy. And just like your book, all the money you raise for your book goes towards child trafficking. And I think maybe people don't even know that. So it's like, what would you say to that for just the lifestyle investor? Like, can you explain more about that? Because to me, that's very attractive. Like, for me, it's not about having all this money, but it's about having that freedom and being in a community of people like that and being connected as well, which is also important for addiction recovery or anything, But I think I'd love to know more about your definition of the lifestyle investor and what that really means. I think it'd be helpful for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. I look at money just as a tool, and it can be a magnifier. It can magnify how someone feels deep down about like the meaning that they give money deep down. But I don't think money is inherently bad. I think there are great things you can do with money and horrible things that you can do with money. And hopefully the right people that have good morals and good ethics and want to do great for the world continue to come into money, right? The whole idea of lifestyle investor is that my goal was to help people buy their time back. I know a ton of people that are very rich, but they're not wealthy, meaning they work like slaves. They don't own their business. Their business owns them, or they're highly paid in corporate America and they've got a boss they don't like and they've got to work crazy hours. Like that to me is horrible. Like you know what? Maybe that's better than being homeless, but there's a better way to do it than that. And so my goal is just to help empower people to think about what would life look like if it were on your terms. Most people, it's a life by default. They just go through life, putting out fires, responding to whatever's going on. And I wanted to be intentional and kind of create my own life, something that for me was inspiring. And so that started with buying assets that produce income. And my goal is to help people buy their time back, to not be a slave to their business or to, the comfort or security of a known thing, what they've always done, or, whatever they might be, whatever might be holding them back. For most people, it's hard for them to shift out of what they're doing unless money's taken care of. I don't think money has to be taken care of. There is a small percentage of people that can make that pivot. Most people can't, though. They need to know that money is solved. And then if you said, hey, you have all the money to cover everything you need, what would you do? I guarantee the vast majority would say, oh, I would do this. They would probably be clear on what they didn't want to do, and maybe or maybe not be clear on what they do want to do. But with that time and space, they would figure it out. And I almost guarantee they would do something different. So my goal is to help people do the thing that really lights them up and spend time with the people that they really love and enjoy being around. So that really is where the Lifestyle Investor, started, where it came from. It was me on my journey to live the life that I had desired and that I had crafted and that I had spent time and kind of mapping out and journaling and kind of getting clear with my wife on what she wanted and the life we wanted for our family, and then pursuing that. And what we want is different than what you want, which is different than what, some of our other mutual friends want. And it's different than what a lot of other listeners want. That's why I think it's really important to get clear on what it is that you want, what would be inspiring and exciting for you. So it's not that I don't want to work. I love working, but I love working on the things that I'm passionate about. And I love spending time with people that I'm passionate about. And I think that for most people, they're tracking this net worth, which is not like I think net worth is one of the worst ways to track. It's like one of the worst metrics to track financial success because it's often rooted in paper money. It's not real money. It's unrealized returns. Most people are more aggressive with the assets, the values of the assets that they own, and aren't aggressive enough with the liabilities that they have. But you don't have to be really wealthy and really rich to live a life that is funded by passive income that exceeds your survival income or exceeds your lifestyle income. We had an unbelievable life where our passive income exceeded our expenses before I was ever a millionaire. And I think that's really important to know when you break it down on a monthly basis of what you need to survive and what you need for your current lifestyle. It's a whole lot different than some big, huge net worth number, which I think is a disservice to most people to really kind of track that.
Yeah, I think what you said right there is huge, because a lot of people are thinking, I need 2.5 million. I need $1 million a year. I need to be a millionaire. And you just said something really important. No, what you need is to have a way to produce enough income that covers the survival income and then beyond, and do it passively. So you have that freedom. You don't have to be a millionaire to do that. And I think that's really important. A lot of people think you got to have $1 million or this, and it's not true. It's learning the investment principles. It's learning from the commandments in your book. It's learning from others in community who are doing this actual thing to know that you do not need that much money. You need to have this strategy and plan in place to have that passive income paying your bills for you and then beyond. And, you're really walking the walk. I mean, we came before this, we started talking, you just came back from a 6-week vacation. So, you're living that lifestyle. It's not talk. There's so much hype on Instagram and social media. And it's just, I can feel the energy of some of these people in the hustle culture. I'm like, I want nothing to do with that. I'd rather go barefoot walking in the grass out there, but also have my bills paid passively and learning those principles behind that. So I think that's really huge.
Well, most people will make different decisions when money is taken care of. And I think it's great to get to the point that that's the case. And it's not going to be overnight. I mean, it's going to be like, hey, we just bought an asset that covers our, utility bills. We just bought another asset that covers our grocery bills. We just bought another asset that covers our mortgage. We just bought another asset that covers. So it's like over time, right? We just covered one that bought our, covered our car payment. And in time, you can get there. But I'm telling you, when someone solves the financial equation of having more passive income than cost or expense to live, the whole world opens up and things are different. And when you can figure out what it is that lights you up, that you want to spend your time doing, it's just a whole new world. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And I feel like in many ways, it's like, not to get esoteric, but it's divine. It's like a divine birthright, to have that freedom and listen to your heart. Where is it guiding me, instead of listening to the mind, which is often in survival and often in just trying to get by. So I think, it can solve a lot of problems, but you have to know what to do. And so I think even your book, it's like $15, and it's a really great way to get started. And, following your podcast is free. And that's why I love this media platform. It's like, you can just listen to some podcasts for like 10 months on all this stuff. And you can buy one asset that pays your utility bills, and get started there. And I'm no expert at all. And I have had plenty, like money is like that root. One of the root traumas is like the money story. And for me, I'm still working through that myself. So this is just a great reminder that let's just start with paying like your grocery bills with that first asset. It doesn't have to pay all your bills on the first investment. And I really love that message for sure. I'm wondering, what would you, in 2023, with everything going on in the world, and maybe this speaks to maybe investments that are like crypto or whatnot, but what would you today, if you could, start today and look at what to invest in and just looking at everything, whether that is crypto or real estate. And I know the stock market is maybe a little less likely, but what would you look at in 2023 to get started, to start to pay your utility bill, to start to pay your grocery bill?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of ways of looking at it. You can invest in other people's projects where, they're syndicating a deal and you're a limited partner in that. So it's not requiring you to manage the asset, but you're getting a piece of the return. There's also you buying the asset outright and you owning that deeded property. And then you can either run it yourself or you can outsource some of the property management to, a professional group. Either one of those, I think, is worth kind of diving into to figure out, are you the person that wants to put your time into this, or are you the person that is not trying to put extra time into it? And I think there's a solution for everyone. There's a lot of things. Like one of the things that I talk about in my book is commandment number 3, which is finding the invisible deals. And that's like figuring out the trends. Like where is the big return for 2024, for example, or the end of 2023, or for 2025? Like what trends are happening? What exists that is not mainstream yet? And part of what I like to follow is what millennials are doing, because that's the biggest wealth transfer in the history of the world is taking place now over the next 10 to 20 years from baby boomers passing their inheritance, their assets, to millennials. And it is estimated that this is going to be somewhere in the $75 to $105 trillion of a wealth transfer. So there's nothing like it. Like the second wealthiest country in the world next to the US is China at $75 trillion. So think about that scale of a wealth transfer, and likely larger than, China as a whole country being transferred. So what are millennials doing? How are they shopping? How are they spending their time? Those are things that I would pay attention to. And I think because of those trends, I've been on the cutting edge of many different investments over the last decade, over the last 2 decades. And I still think real estate's a great place to start. I've got a mobile home park under contract. I'm actually putting a second mobile home park under contract today, nice. Right after our podcast. So I still like that space. I still like industrial real estate a lot. I think e-commerce is the way of the future, and we're going to need more of that to support it, especially in markets that are outside of major metros, especially like last mile of a major metro. Like, those I think are great opportunities, but there are going to be others. You can make the argument that AI is the hot thing right now. I've been investing in AI for, 5 to 7 years. Now it's just become cool and popular within the last year or two. But I definitely think that's the way of the future. I think robotics is the way of the future. I think we're going to need to really figure out some healthcare things with the baby boomers. So that's part of the future. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. Technology is going to continue to double in shorter periods of time. And so finding the right technology that, is in demand in the future, like that's what I look for. I invested in mobile home parks when everyone told me not to. Now Wall Street's investing in them, and I get offers from private equity firms all the time that they want to buy my whole portfolio. I used to be made fun of because of it, e-commerce. I got laughed out of the room when I talked about e-commerce when it first started. People are like, no one's going to buy stuff online. People are always going to go to a store. So I got started in that super early. I started investing in cannabis, hemp, CBD super early, So, I could go on and on and on. Like technology, there's all kinds of technology I invested in way back. I've been investing in robotics for probably 7 to 10 years. So yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities out there. I think we're in an era where we're going to see just more opportunity. If you are looking, I think we're going to see more opportunities in the next 10 years than probably the last 10 years, even though the last 10 years was really darn frothy.
Yeah. And when we met in Sedona, I think, for the first time. We went on a hike. I don't know if it was Bell Rock or wherever, but it was pretty epic. And I remember you talking about Bitcoin and crypto then, and that was like 2018, and it's been pretty volatile. So where's your stance now with that? Because I knew you were getting invested in that.
Yeah, my stance is still the same on Bitcoin. I still think that is a store of value. I think that I think it's going to go up. I think at some point in time, it's going to be 6 figures and hopefully more than that, but I think it'll be at least 6 figures. So yeah, I'm still a buyer there. I think most crypto probably won't work. I'm always leery on the crypto side of things. I think there's opportunities to make a lot of money. There's opportunities to lose a lot of money. So I have invested very little in crypto per se outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe 1 or 2 other coins. But primarily, I'm like 95% Bitcoin of my crypto portfolio. And then the rest is Ethereum. And then maybe I've got 1% or less of that whole portfolio, which is only, probably 3 to 5% of my net worth, that is in just every other altcoin that I think has something substantial. So it's a very small percentage. But Bitcoin, I just am a believer in. I think it's going to do great things. And all in, I'm way up on Bitcoin because I started investing in that many years ago.
Yeah, and I just want to let the listeners know too, for people who don't know Justin, Justin is considered the investment world's new Warren Buffett. You know what I mean? So I'm not talking to just anyone about investments, and I know how successful you've been. So I want to take it maybe a step further. We've had a lot of guests, and I have a lot of interviews coming up about the world of psychedelic assisted therapy and psychedelics. And there's a lot of people eyeing that space, especially big pharma. And Johnson & Johnson's already deep into it with ketamine assisted therapy. So for good or bad, whatever. But I think it could be a really helpful medicine. What is your take on that space and where that's going? And are you invested in it if you feel like sharing?
Yeah, I also think that space is going to be it's going to be like cannabis in the fact that you've got pockets that perform really well. You've got overall the markets that are not performing well. You've got state side legalization, which you're seeing. You've got some things that are federally legal, some things that are legal by state. But I think some of these therapies are unbelievable. Psilocybin, ketamine, there's a number of what we'll call drugs, based on the way that the government, communicates it, that they're, a certain schedule of drug. But most people don't realize that these are being used as therapies in John Hopkins and many other like institutions, and they have been for like the last 2 decades and beyond in some cases with all kinds of trials. So yeah, I think that there are going to be companies poised to do well there, but I think there's going to be a ton that die and don't do well and can't get the funding, just like a lot of these cannabis companies can't get funding. So, if you get a company that takes off and they have the right network and they have figured out a way that, they get some government support, I do think that those can be successful. But like crypto, like cannabis, I think there's going to be a lot of losers inside of a good handful of winners.
Yeah, and we've already seen some psychedelic companies go under. So absolutely, it's a really fascinating space. Just being a show called Entrepreneurs in Recovery, obviously a lot of entrepreneurs are into psychedelic assisted therapy. And so it's something that I like to ask guests. And of course, I want to ask you about it, being an investment expert. I'm wondering, Justin, what is your highest intention right now? What are you creating in the world right now? What are you most excited about that's coming into your vision right now?
Well, I think that we're lacking a lot of things on the investment side that can really help us, one of which being software that can track and analyze deals on the alternative investment side. So not in the stock market, real estate, private equity, that sort of thing, venture capital. And, I've partnered with a company, I've invested in a company called Copia that I'm really excited about. I think Copia Wealth Studios, I think they're going to do some amazing things for those that invest in alternatives. I'm really excited about some of the events that we're hosting in Lifestyle Investor. We're doing our first ever Lifestyle Investor live event for non-members. We've never done a non-member event before. So that's coming up on September 29th of this year, 2023. And we're doing a tax strategy course. So one of the things that we've been doing a lot of is sharing strategies that people in our community are using, that our advisors and experts are using and teaching to help people reduce taxes, or in many cases, completely eliminate taxes. So I'm excited for that to come out, that we're doing as a full-fledged production. One of the members of our mastermind is a director and producer for Fox Sports. So she's actually going to produce it for us, and we're going to put that out as a tax product here, probably in October or November. So yeah, we got a number of projects we're excited about.
Yeah, I love that. And definitely anyone listening, I want to share all this in the show notes too. This episode will take a little bit to come out. And so I think by that time you'll have, that course would be out. I want to actually definitely look at that course about taxes. And so in any of these events, like the non-member event, September 29th, definitely want to link that in the show notes as well. Do you have anything that you want to share with our audience about, where they can find you, where they can work with you, learn more about your mastermind and all these great things you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. I mean, we've got products for everyone. I mean, the goal is to have a podcast that's free. We've got blogs that are free. We've got a ton of stuff at lifestyleinvestor.com, that's free or rather inexpensive. Of course, we've got our book. You can, all the proceeds of the book go to fight human trafficking. So we donate to Love Justice International and Tim Tebow Foundation primarily. We're just huge fans. But because of the success of the book became a #1 Wall Street Journal bestseller and USA Today bestseller. But now it's a top 1% of all books ever sold. So we've literally donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to these humanitarian efforts to help rescue kids. It's really exciting. And something I'd love to do for your audience, since it seems like you have people that are really eager to kind of take next steps. We've got, our team will do free consultations for people. And so I'd love to offer that to your group. If you go to lifestyleinvestor.com/consultation, you can get a free consultation to figure out like, hey, what's a good step for you? Should you be focused on, getting out of debt, or is there a product that makes a lot of sense? Because we have an online course and a masterclass on mobile home park investing and a passive income masterclass and a mastermind. And not everything's right for everyone, but I think we can give some guidance to those that are kind of looking for, what is next? Maybe you're unsure of the next step, but as I say in my podcast, at the end of every episode, I always challenge our audience to think of one step they can take to move towards financial freedom and move towards a life by design, not by default.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I had you on the show, Justin. I'm so grateful for your time. When I met you all those years ago, I said, I need to follow this guy. This guy, he's definitely walking the walk, and you do. And it's very inspiring. And where I'm at in my life and my financial journey and becoming a lifestyle investor, I mean, I'm definitely just grateful to have you in my life and the next steps of that journey. So thank you so much for coming on our show. I really appreciate you, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me, Jesse. It's always a blast, always great to connect. I'm so glad that we met way back when in the energy vortexes of Sedona.
Exactly.
Cool, man.
Absolutely, my friend. All right. Thanks so much. And we will talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching today's episode. Your support means the world to me. So thank you for liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel and to this podcast. We've got amazing content and amazing interviews coming out soon. So thanks again. Enjoy your day. Sending love and blessings to you all.